Let's bring in CBSN political contributor and RealClearPolitics reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns back with us. Caitlin, thanks for being here again. So no fuzz as far as James Comey is concerned on the Russian meddling in the election, but a lot of fuzz depending on how you're interpreting the events of today, especially after you listen to what the president's personal attorney said and how he went after James Comey.
Right. The attorney and the White House saying that this testimony exonerated, in their words, the president, because they say that James Comey confirmed that he told the president that he was not him personally under investigation. But that's not the issue here. The people under investigation are allies or are Michael Flynn, of the administration. And so that's what's important to kind of separate out here. What's also important that's kind of missed in this whole thing is that this all starts because of this Russia investigation, meddling in the election. And Comey today was also trying to remind people why that matters, that a foreign government, a known adversary of ours, is trying to influence our elections. And so that was important to kind of put this into context of why this all is important here.
James Comey called the White House and the president a liar. The president's attorney called James Comey a liar as well. Lindsey Graham was just asked about this. He downplayed this a little bit, which maybe is surprising. He did say, somebody asked me, does it bother you that he called the president a liar like everybody in town calls the president a liar? And yes, there's a lot of nasty communication back and forth on the Hill, but those people who are saying that are not always under oath, and they're not always the former director of the FBI.
Exactly. They're not the former director of the FBI. That's the key point here. And we expected in the testimony Comey to have some pretty harsh reactions, I would say, to his conversations with the president. You could tell from the statement that he released yesterday that this was unsettling to him, that it was improper, that it was inappropriate. He said he didn't take these kinds of notes with other presidents because he didn't really have to worry about that kind of thing. And so that suggests that he wanted to document everything with this president. But today he said he did so because he thought the president would lie about those conversations. And just to hear that coming from someone like Comey is pretty startling, actually.
It's interesting to hear him talk about how he hopes that people appreciate the totality of the testimony, because he went back himself between sort of not knowing exactly what this, under the questioning from Rubio, when Senator Rubio said to him, did you interpret that as an order to drop the Flynn investigation? Yes, I did. Why didn't you confront him about that? And James Comey said, I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
And he went back and forth today between that and then also being much more forceful about things and saying, listen, when he asked Jeff Sessions and Jared Kushner to leave the Oval Office and keep me there, that's wrong.
Right, exactly. And an interesting line of questioning from Susan Collins, a Republican from Maine who is considered one of the more moderate members of the Republican Party in the Senate. She started off her questioning by saying, look, we know that was inappropriate. We know that he shouldn't have done that. But why did you stay in that room? Why didn't you say anything to the president at that time? And Comey's response to that question and others of that variety were, I was kind of really surprised by this because it's never really happened before. So he said at the time he didn't really know how to react but wanted to be careful about it, but knew enough to go back and make those notes about it. What's interesting about this testimony is that we're already seeing responses from people who weren't in that room, Republicans and Democrats. Democrats saying there's a lot here, Republicans saying not a lot. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this is divided in kind of partisan terms here. But it was also interesting to see some of the Republicans on this committee trying to get that out of him. And so in some ways they were trying to kind of build some kind of defense for the president, who's actually causing them a lot of trouble because it's distracting from their larger agenda.
There's plenty of red meat to chew on here, depending on what bite you want to take, and which side you're coming from here, and it's playing out in rapid speed, as we know. The response from the president's attorney, one would think that you potentially hear from the president himself via Twitter, wherever else, whether tonight or tomorrow morning.
Right. They've tried to keep the president busy today with activities, and he actually, of course, had the speech that he gave today. We have seen the president, though, respond to these kinds of things in the past, kind of after the fact, later on, as he's watched the news coverage, as he's watched how it's been digested by reporters and the media. And so wouldn't be surprised if we heard from him. We did hear from his son, interestingly, tweeting.
We always knew there was a mechanism by which James Comey got this information out, but it wasn't talked about a lot, even though we talked about the information that he was putting out. Were you surprised at the transparency at which he addressed how he distributed that information?
I was surprised by that transparency, and I was also surprised by the timeline. So he said that after the president had tweeted about these so-called tapes, he said, I hope, Comey better hope that I don't have tapes. Remember, that started off this whole big line of questioning and, of course, evoking all the Nixon references. Comey said that he felt that he needed to get his side of the story out because of that tweet, and he shared this information, shared the information about the memos to his friend. Of course, that friend is now easily traceable, and that friend shared with the New York Times under Comey's direction. And Comey said he hoped that that would spark a special counsel.
Which I find the more interesting part about this.
Right.
It's one thing getting out your side of the story.
Right.
It's another, I believe, to acknowledge that the reason you're doing this is to prompt the special counsel to be involved.
Exactly. And when you listen to the way in which he responded to questions about whether this is obstruction of justice, he said, that's not in my purview. That is now for Mueller to decide. And of course, he and Mueller are very close. They've worked very closely together at the FBI, both former directors now. And so that was interesting. So this idea of the president being exonerated by this, there is also potentially, we don't know, Mueller perhaps looking into possibility of obstruction.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thanks once again for being here.
Thank you.